Good morning. How are you today? It's nice. The light's in a different position than I've been going lately, in part because of the heat and because of Johns Hopkins and because of my cases. But it's nice to be out now. 76. I've long had the habit of adding numbers together. 7 plus 6, that's 13. 1 plus 3, that's 4. Reduce it to a single number. Any spread of numbers, reduce it to a single number. And then if you're into numerology, you can try to decide if that's a good or a useful number or not. We're going to talk about credit card debt in a minute, so that'll be a kick. But I'd like to start with the fact that in the category of the January 6th accounting, another head rolls today. We have Joe, not Biggs, who is one of the Proud Boys, and he was sentenced today, and he got 17 years. Now, that's a lot of time. That could be a life sentence. I don't know what his health condition is. And the government asked for 33 years. Shows a little gumption there. And this guy was an apprentice to Alex Jones after he spent 8 years in the Army. So he did service. I don't know. I suppose he was honorably discharged. But how does a man like that, like many of the people that involved in January 6th and Trump and Rudy Giuliani and these people, how do they fall from seeming responsible citizenry to being convicted, as is in the case of Crazy Joe here, seditious conspiracy? How does that happen? But there's no question it did, and now he's going to pay for it. And so we're getting to some of the street people who thought they could be terrorists and get away with it in a large crowd. But never estimate the technology to catch up with you. Also, these guys were saying things online and people talked and gave clues and stuff like that. So they're getting what they deserve. In the case of next week, everybody who's waiting for Trump and the other defendants to show up in Georgia and to enter not guilty pleas. I don't think there's any surprise there. They've waived their right to appear as they may, and to have the indictment read to them, as happened when they set bail. They also waived it then. And so they don't have to appear if they've waived their appearance to the proceeding. It's sensible. It happens in all the cases, particularly well, this is a combination white-collar, brutal case, but there it is. So, Trump is waiving, and so are the others, so there won't be any court proceeding next week. Nevertheless, it raises the question that Meadows is still working on. He's hoping that the court will decide that he's a special person, in the sense that he was really doing his job when he was trying to reverse the results of the election. You got to give it to him, right? I don't know, I guess it's the greed of these guys that catches your attention. You know, I think of Thomas. Thomas today or yesterday is conceding that he took 3 trips on the arm of Harlan Crow, his funding agent, for going to high places and marvelous settings, and at the same time having pillow talk, I assume, about the cases pending before the court that has, at least in terms of appearances, influenced what Thomas did on the court. Thomas may say things like, oh, I was just doing what I would do. Well, I don't think so. We have the situation with McConnell, who, while standing still, went into his deep freeze again for 10 seconds. I don't celebrate a man's illness, but I do think that he should deal with it for himself personally and for his public function. If this is severe, he should accept that fact. It's not easy for us to deal with change, no matter how many times we read Holacrates say that it is permanent, irresistible, and will go on with or without your consent. But we have to accept things, and age is not for the faint of heart. all sorts of modifications through life. You know, some people say, oh, he'll never change. Well, if you don't change and you don't adapt, your quality of life, of the possibility of life, goes away. I mean, we see it all around us all the time. And some of us were lucky, say, I wanted to be an athlete, so I didn't do all the things that my stupid friends did. And, you know, because if you think that you have to be fit in order to compete, that makes a difference. If you think you have to study because you want to get out of the Bronx, it puts you in a different frame of reference than some other people are. So we have a situation where we have people hanging on to power at any personal cost, wanting to be remembered for having the most years of public service, or having the chance of being the leader in the Senate again. I don't know, but he obviously has a serious problem when he can't be aroused from this falling asleep while standing up. It's pretty troubling. Now, there's also a proposal that Justice Department should reconsider how it lists pot as a bad drug. And part of that, of course, is the fact that it's been used medicinally. And I'm sure there are the recreation activists out there who say, well, if it causes no harm, why shouldn't we have it? And I doubt that it will change, because we've had this parallel system of prosecuting people for pot in states where the states have recognized, either or both, that they're medically helpful, and the entertainment value of the drug is no more dangerous than, 100 whiskey sours. So the challenge, of course, is in a regulatory atmosphere where allowing doctors to prescribe for pain, particularly among the aging baby boomers and the people who get hurt in jobs, and the strange diseases that affect people that cause great pain that can be alleviated with these drugs, well, then how can we expect, if they can't do pot, how are they ever going to do these things? And so we have lay people who have no business attending to medical care, just deciding this is dangerous stuff. And it was used as a medium of exchange between nations, not pot, but heroin, harder drugs. And that was true during the Vietnam War as well. So we have to keep these things in mind about the failure of government, even as we see it being helpful in curing the adverse effects of the Trump conspiracy and intended autocracy in defiance of a long history of democracy and a republic. My joke about numbers is a more serious one in this way. People have been getting credit cards forever. And I have to wonder if society's laxity in what are the duties and obligations of a person who, say, signs a contract or agrees to do some work or to tell the truth, etc., etc. And yes, I think that that's the Trump factor in our society. Trump and his adherents all have a low respect for the truth, for the laws, for the Constitution, for understood good and ethical behavior. And so I turned my attention to what are we doing with credit cards. And right now, as I speak to you, we have a credit delinquency of large proportions. There are 70 million people with delinquent credit cards, as I understand it. And that amounts to $1 trillion. And these credit cards are with some major stores. For example, Macy's. Macy's is finding that the credit payments are coming in slow, if at all. And this is a new development. Now, how does that happen? It could just be the willful disobedience to a duty and an obligation, but it could also be that presently they can't do anything about it, and they don't have the wherewithal. Now, they claim the inflation makes a difference. I don't know, 10% or whatever, but we have tremendous employment, and we have inflation stopped or declining, but we still have these people who may have turned their house into a bank, took the money that was in equity in the house and turned it into a consumer loan. And a lot of these delinquent credit cards involve delinquent loans, consumer loans. So this is America. Part of our financial problem are those people who haven't kept their house in order. Now, of course, some can't. I'm not being harsh about this. And some, for some reason I don't understand, never understood how the simple credit market that we as individuals use applies to them. And they're told, hey, you can have this house, you can have that car, you can have this sound system, you can go to Puerto Rico, you can do all sorts of things. Well, great, but can you afford it? What are you going to do when you come back? What are you going to do when you're sitting in your car and you can't pay the damn gas, and you can't pay it for your kids, and you can't pay your medication, and you can't pay these other things? And yes, we do have an economy that provides by our government certain trade-offs to give a hand up to those who made bad decisions or were not informed how to do it. But this is a serious problem because it's large, and it's going to affect large businesses if it's not redressed, and it's going to affect workers at these businesses that will downsize or whatever. So this is a serious problem. We have to pay attention to it. Another large problem, of course, is the Idalia phenomenon. We're going to see more and more of this. Idalia hit land, and it was a Hurricane 3 storm. It was coming in at 125 miles an hour, pretty serious. There was all sorts of flooding and winds blowing down things. Somehow, only 2 people have died so far. And we can be grateful for that. And the Idalia's moved on. And so, all the politicians, it's like what we do with our most challenging questions. Children are dead. Oh, okay, say prayers, go. Look sincere, do nothing, absolutely nothing. So, what about the environment? Well, we announce programs. What is their impact? Little or nothing, because we're giving away the land for fossil fuels. And we don't see, well, we do understand it, people do understand it, but the government pretends not to and compromises what can go on. And, the Waters of the USA is another program in which we try to protect our water, even when it's near large bodies of, quote, USA water. And the Supreme Court and EPA are backing off that mission. And years ago, I ended up talking against the local farmers who were against this. So, for instance, if they had a dump pool, and it was near a river or a creek, and therefore it could leach through that because there was no foundation, that's Waters of the USA, in my opinion. That was the law. I don't think it is now. So you see, the dangers are multivariate, and it's too complex for a walk on a tree-lined road, but it is simple enough to understand as it worsens to be described in simple sentences. Houston, we have a problem. And unlike the astronauts, we're not doing a blanking thing about it. Oh yeah, we make noise about it, and by 10, 20 years from now something's going to happen, but if nothing happens between now and then, all of a sudden a new class of politicians will be saying, I can't believe they did nothing. 20 years from now, we'll reverse those numbers. And in the meantime, people will die, lose businesses, lands, suffer, starve, and we won't do anything about it. Yet there are still some characters, you know, probably sitting next to you at the eatery that you go to every once in a while, who is just fine with doing nothing and says, we'll go to Mars. Yeah, right. There's a decision for you. So those are some of my thoughts today on this very comfortable day out here. And so I say to you from the Cathedral of Trees, have a wonderful day, and I'll do everything I can to talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.